You are here for the greater good of all. Doesn't everything about that feel so right? I mean, when you affirm that, I am here for the greater good of all, you can feel it. You can feel that everything about that is oh so right. I want to start this morning by asking a question that we're kind of adopting as a way of beginning the service, and that is, do you believe that you've been called to this moment in history to be the one? Yeah. And you are not only called, but you are empowered. You are an empowered for this moment in history. Let's affirm that together. I am empowered for this moment in history. Together, I am empowered for this moment in history. And do you want to know your next steps on this journey of empowerment? Yes. And do you want to know the way to seize those next steps? And do you want to know the very nature of what that looks like? We're in the right place. We closed the talk last week with asking those very questions, and we said, if that's what you want to know, come next week. Well, here we are. Here we are exploring the ways to seize those very next steps in your life to know that greater good for yourself and for others, that greater good from God or from Spirit or from the universe, whatever word that is for you, that greater good of the larger aspect of yourself that is out there preparing the way for you. You know, the larger aspect of yourself that is out there preparing the way for you is recorded in this Gospel of John, the Gnostic Gospel, as saying, you know the way. You know the way to it. And of course, it then says, I am the way. The I am is the way to it. The I am nature is the way to seize your next steps. So let's explore that. And let's bring a little, sometimes in Unity we like to say that we are a practical, progressive approach to spirituality. And some unities actually say we're a practical, progressive approach to Christianity. So that's up to you to decide that. But let's make that very practical this morning in a way that we can very much be conscious of just what those next steps look like. Last week's talk was entitled, Detached, Set Free, What's Next? And then when we looked at last week's talk, we decided and we become very aware that right now, it's very amplified, this whole idea about living our lives intentionally. And we're not taking one thing away from that in this talk, nor in last week's talk. We're here to live our lives intentionally. Abraham Hicks, I love when she starts her process. She says, the first thing you got to know is what you want, right? It all starts with knowing what we want. It all starts with intention. And we explored that she also said, yes, that's true, but don't hold on too tight. I actually saw something from her this week. It says, stop trying so hard to be a deliberate creator. You're already a deliberate creator. Stop trying so hard to be a deliberate creator. You're already that. Accept that, she said, and things will unfold perfectly for you. There's an aspect of you that is you, that it's out preparing the way for you, that is a deliberate creator. Accept that, and it'll unfold perfectly for you. And so we closed last week, and we saw that there is this larger aspect. And sometimes we may not be completely aware of exactly what it's preparing for. And then during that talk, we looked at this oneness document that Rasha received this information. And we looked at chapter 2, and it's a glimpse into the experience of ascending. A glimpse into experiencing where you're just becoming more conscious. Becoming more conscious of what that greater aspect of you is that is out there preparing for you. And so I'd just like to read that again so we can just get grounded in this idea again, okay? So in chapter 2, a glimpse into the experience of ascending, it says, in the process of integrating more of your whole self, capital S, into our lives, and in the process of transcending one's prior focus, there is no need to direct the process with our intent, for it is you who will be directed, not the other way around. We together? Yeah. So she goes on to write in that same section about being aware of a guidance in its nature. One sense is in the absolute receptivity in surrendering totally on every possible level the need, the compulsion to control the process. Do you hear that? Isn't that same thing that Abraham was saying? Absolutely the same thing. She says, one becomes, this is what she received, one becomes a leaf on the wind, embodying the willingness to be carried with the momentum of the process, knowing unquestionably that one's best interests and one's well-being are being seen in every way. Can we trust that? Can we trust that the I Am has our absolute best interest in its mind when it's guiding us? She went on to say, in this way, one is able to ride the energy of momentum in the direction of the momentum. One unites momentum and form. One unites momentum and its manifestations as you're guided along in this total surrender. And then she went on to say, to revisit that again this week, this is the direction you are headed in these times. In other words, there is a new way emerging, not only through the way of knowledge and data and collecting all this information, but we're moving into this age in humanity where insight, foresight, intuition, and you hear it so much now, direct downloads are guiding us. You hear that word a lot now? Yeah, I got a direct download. This is what's happening. This is the call to develop our spiritual faculties so that we become so aware to the intuitive way, to the direct knowledge way. This is the time we're living in. This is a new way. And we visited last week. You know an age has run its cycle. It doesn't mean that we're going to get rid of data and knowledge and study and knowledge. But when it starts to amplify itself so high, I mean, everything is about collecting data now, right? You have data at your fingertip. We visited last week. You know it's coming to the end of an age where that's the sole way. And so that's the day that we're here in. Now, here's the thing we're going to really look close at this morning. Our spiritual downloads and our moments of clarity are united with an empowered way forward. Are you with me? When you get that download, when you get that intuition, when you get that foresight, when you receive something directly from Spirit and you realize it in clarity, you will know an empowerment that goes with it. You will know an empowerment that goes with it. Let's look at that in the Scriptures because, it visits that. And then what we're going to do is after we look at it in the Scriptures, real briefly, we're actually going to visit someone's life where we can make this very practical and see it. And see how the moment they got clarity, they changed the world, literally. But in the Scriptures, you'll always see this number 50 associated with those times when you get your clarity and it's time to go. It's time to move. It's time to merge with your higher self's flow. Okay? That's the key to seizing your next step, is you merge with your higher self's flow. So there's this number 50, and of course it always comes after the number 40, and the number 40 is all about that time where you're really getting clear on who you are. I mean, if you look at those stories, you can see that's what it is. When Moses leads the Israelites, across the waters into a new day, who were they following? The I am that I am. So 40 is all about that time. First thing you got to do is get clear who you are. Baptism, that's what it's about. It's about getting clear on who you are. So the next thing that happens, you know what happens when they cross the waters, they get to the other side? What happens after 50 days? They get their directive. Moses goes to the top of Mount Sinai and he receives the 10 Commandments. His job now is an empowered journey to actually bring order to chaos so that more and more can know I am. Or in the Scriptures at Pentecost, right? Remember there was 40 days after Jesus' resurrection and he's with them? Being with them so that they can actually come to know within themselves through his complete knowing, I am. They can begin to get clear on that. And then he ascends, and 50 days later, Pentecost occurs, right? And that was the time when they were going to tell all the nations, right? This is so. This is the way. The I am is the way. It's a free way. It's a liberated way. So it always comes in these scriptures that there's this download that happened at Pentecost. You've read that story, or if you've read that story, all of a sudden they understand languages they didn't understand before. They could speak languages that they couldn't speak before. Can you see that their perception is expanded? They're ready now. They have been spiritually prepared to go. They can actually go forward and understand others, without prejudice and these kind of things. That's why it's preparing you. When you get it, you know it's yours. And what happens when you get this download, what you get with it is a moment of clarity with your heart. You'll actually get a moment of moral clarity. Do you hear that? You'll know that everyone knows that what you're stepping into is the way of the heart. Don't wait. You might not hear it on the surface that that's the way, but you'll know this is the way of the heart. I read a quote this week. It says, leaders are ones that know what they know, and through knowing, those around them know that they know what they know. Do you hear that? There's clarity. There's complete clarity. So let's look at a moment of clarity in someone's life that changed this world. That absolutely, when they got their moment of clarity, they didn't have it at first. In fact, they had a different intention than what actually ends up happening. This is so key. What happens to Martin Luther King is he gets a moment of clarity and changes this world. But he didn't have that moment of clarity at first. When Rosa Parks, she was denied that seat on the bus. What happens is there's this group at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, and they're deciding, they're going to boycott the bus service, right? So they asked Martin Luther King, can we use your church? And he agrees. Now, he's 26 at the time. Dr. Martin Luther King, had a doctorate in systematic theology, and he was intending, as a minister, to one day become a professor. Are you with me? His intention brought him there, right? He didn't get there without intention, of course. But the wind blows where it will. You do not hear the sound of it where it comes from. So it is of everyone born of spirit. Are you with me? Yeah. So in December of 1955, when this happens to Rosa Parks, he's 26 years old. He's going to become a professor. His intentions is to let him right to where he was at, but his spirit had bigger plans. So does yours. So does mine. Our spirit has much bigger plans than anything we can know on the outer conscious level, right? It just does. Pay attention. So here's what happens next. And this is from an article written by a gentleman named Luis Menand. He's a columnist with the New Yorker. And he gets this information out of Dr. Martin Luther King's autobiography. So there they are, December 5th. There's a mass meeting, and it was called, and they were going to meet at the Holt Street Baptist Church. And so they they come to Dr. King's church, and in that time, they go into the basement, and they voted to call themselves, this movement, the Montgomery Improvement Association. Now, he's agreed to them coming to his church to have this meeting. But to his surprise, they vote him and elect him to be the group's president. He's got 1 hour to get to that church where there's some 5,000 people assembled to write a talk. He's not only the president, he's going to give the talk. Yeah. Now, what it says in his autobiography is Dr. Martin Luther King says it typically took him 15 hours to write a speech, and he had 20 minutes. By the time he got home, told his wife where he was going, come on, let's go. He said a total of 20 minutes, but he said, I really only had 15 because I was in complete panic for 5 minutes. Okay? And as he is going there, and as this time is occurring in between, he doesn't have clarity. He doesn't have it. In fact, he has a thought going around in his mind that says, this boycott might be unethical. Might not be Christian, was the words he said. If we shut down the Montgomery buses, it would deprive other riders of a service that they depend on. He also said it would deprive the bus drivers of their way to make a living. You know, maybe all we're doing here is we're responding to an injury by inflicting another injury. He thought, well, is this revenge? But then in a moment of stillness, he got this clarity. He got this clarity. He said, I come to see that what we really were doing was withdrawing our cooperation from an evil system. Rather than merely withdrawing our support from the bus company being an external expression of the system would naturally suffer, but the basic aim was to refuse cooperation with evil. Can we see this morning that if he doesn't get that clarity, he doesn't have the vibration for the speech he's about to give that changed the world? What we're saying this morning is in your next steps, first thing you got to do is get that clarity. You instinctively know, you intuitively know, you know from your own life that when you get clarity, and in his case, moral clarity, your vibration goes up. When you begin to speak words, your vibration goes up. And it's not just your words at this point that are communicating. It's your whole being that's communicating. He gets that clarity. He moves into that time where it's now to take the next steps. And you know the speech. We are not wrong in what we're doing. If we are wrong, the Supreme Court of this nation is wrong. If we are not wrong, the Constitution of the United States is wrong. If we are wrong, God Almighty is wrong. And they say that's right. If we are wrong, he says, Jesus of Nazareth was merely a utopian dreamer that never came down to earth. If we are wrong, justice is a lie. Do you hear the clarity? I mean, he's willing to put it out there. Do you ever get to that point in your life where you say, if I can't trust this, what can I trust? That's how I made my transition to unity, because I had that waffling going on. I did. It took me years. And one day I said to myself, if I can't trust my heart, what can I trust? Yeah. You get that clarity. Then you begin to merge with your higher self's flow. And he goes on to say, if we are wrong, love has no meaning. And we are determined here in Montgomery to work and fight until justice runs down water like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. And records that's one of his favorite scriptures from Amos. The talk title this morning is Seizing the Next Steps in Your Life. What's the way? I am is the way. I am. Number one, get that inner clarity of who you are. Number two, let that clarity just come into your heart where you know this is mine. Dr. Martin Luther King did not have that understanding at the surface at that point. I'm going to be a professor, right? But then the flow just started going. And that's when you got to align with the flow of your higher self's flow. How will you know it is the steps your hearts are prepared for? Because what happens is almost an indescribable flow is there. Almost an indescribable support is there. And almost an indescribable grace is there. Yeah. When you take that step, all of a sudden, or sometimes I've noticed, it's just like, whoa, Everything's lining up here. You ever have that moment where, wow, everything just lined up? I mean, I have been wondering about this. I've been thinking about this. But, oh, there it is. Yeah. There it is. Almost everyone is, you're receiving this because you know this. That's how you seize your next step. You seize it through merging with your higher steps flow in your clarity. Are you with me? Namaste. Namaste.